Praise be to our Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to this fourth episode of Views of Indian Christians Expressed or Voice, an initiative of the Indian Catholic Forum. Our question for today is, did Jesus die on a cross? Wow, that's a big one. And the short answer is no. What? Well, for the full answer, if you really want the answer, please watch this video till the end. You've heard us saying, dead men tell no tales. Is that correct? No, it's wrong. Because a lifeless body holds more secrets than a person who's alive. Because you can investigate it fully. You can ask any forensic scientist or a doctor conducting an autopsy or a post-mortem. For example, if you want to know to determine the time of death of a person, you insert a thermometer into its liver and the temperature will tell you how much time has elapsed from the time of death. So let us examine the suffering of Jesus by investigating his body. Now say, where's the body? Okay, we don't have the body, but we do have circumstantial evidence of what happened to that body, and that circumstantial evidence is the Shroud of Turin. Now you may say, oh, that's a hoax, so how can we believe that? Okay, let's examine it. Its historicity and its authenticity. It was found in the year 1204 in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul in Turkey. It was given in 1452 to the Duchess of Savoy in Italy, and till today it belongs to them, though it is housed in the Cathedral of Turin. Now, what I am going to tell you about the shroud is based on a book, The Passion of Our Lord, written by Dr. Pierre Barbet, MD, the former head of the Department of Surgery of St. Joseph's Hospital in Paris. Now, there are very important findings from the shroud, but first let us examine its authenticity. To begin with, is it a painting, is it a photograph, or is it something inexplicable to science? Now, how's a negative formed? Like in the old days, when we had black and white photography, you know what a negative is. And how is a negative formed? When chemicals on a surface are exposed to light, then they form a negative. But 2000 years ago, there were no cameras, there were no photographs, so how could this happen? Secondly, when you do take a photograph, there will always be a shadow behind the photograph. But what we find on the shroud, there are no shadows, so it could not have been a photograph. The second thing is, could it have been a painting? Now I'm going to show you two pieces of cloth. Now have a look at this. This is painted. Can you see it? It's painted. These are brush strokes. When you paint something, you can see the strokes of the paint. But when you put a liquid on a cloth, see the difference. It spreads out from the center, from where the drop fell. And when it spreads along what is called the warp and woof of the fabric with capillary action. And if you examine it with a magnifying glass, you will find how the liquid has spread along the warp and woof of the fabric, which is called capillary action in science. So we see it is not a photograph, it is not a painting, so then it is inexplicable to science. That being so, I believe it is something authentic which we can study. Incidentally, though the image on the shroud is negative, the blood stains on the shroud are positive, again inexplicable. And the blood is of the AB strain. So, since I believe that science cannot explain it, we shall reflect on it. And we shall, we recite these 5 sorrowful mysteries. Have we really reflected on what they are? But the shroud will tell us the real meaning of these five sorrowful mysteries. To begin with, the person placed in the shroud was 6 feet in height with a well proportioned body. Remember that he was a carpenter. So, what are the five mysteries? The first mystery, of course, is the agony in the garden, where Luke himself, a physician, makes this statement. His sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. Luke 22:44. Now, the Greek word which Luke used was thrombos. Thrombos. That means a clot. This phenomenon in science is known as hematidrosis, an increased vasodilation of the subcutaneous capillaries, that is just below the skin, and when they come in contact with the sweat glands, then they become globules of blood or liquid which fall to the ground. Now, what was the effect of this hematidrosis? It resulted in, first of all, excessive blood loss, and the skin became very, very tender, which would make it even more susceptible to pain in the subsequent torture. I use the word torture and not passion because that is what Jesus really experienced. The second sorrowful mystery is the scourging. Now, in those days, the Romans used a whip called a flagrum, which had two thongs, and each thong had two lead balls to give weight and power to the whipping. From the shroud, we find that there were two men who were doing the scourging. One is the taller fellow and one is the shorter fellow. How do we say that? Because the tall man, when he was whipping, it was like this, in this direction, a diagonal action. And the shorter man was hitting like this, in a circular action, which the whip even went round to the front of Jesus' body. These are the findings from the shroud. The next finding from the scourging is that normally we think that Jesus' hands were tied at the back. No, the shroud tells us his hands were tied on top like this. Why? Because there were no marks on the arms. There were no whip marks on the arms. Another finding from the shroud is that Jesus was naked. He did not even have the loin cloth, which in the Jewish custom is known as sublicaculum. So we now move to the third mystery, the crowning of thorns. We often think of it as a kind of a wreath which was placed on Jesus. But actually it was a full cap like this which was hammered down on his head to the extent that it penetrated the cranium and even the forehead. And the thorns that were used at that time were from the Ziphus spina Christi tree, a very thorny type of tree. So we now move to the fourth sorrowful mystery, the carrying of the cross. Now, as I said, did Jesus die on a cross? Because it's a misnomer, because Jesus did not actually die on a cross. He did not even carry a cross. So what did he carry? He carried what is called only the cross beam, the horizontal beam, which is known as the patibulum. So when he carried this, and the horizontal section is known as the stipes. That was vertical, and that was vertical section, and that was permanently fixed in the ground. So the condemned person only carried the horizontal section on his shoulders. Now, from the shroud, we find that Jesus carried the cross on his right shoulder, because he is the cross section. When it was on his right shoulder, and it was rubbing against the shoulder blade of his left shoulder. When he fell under its weight, he fell on his right knee, because that's where the blood is shown, from the right knee, which again is scientifically explainable. So we find that in fact it was not a cross, but it was what is called a T, like this, which is called tau, the 19th letter of the Greek alphabet. And this is something which centuries later even Francis of Assisi discovered and showed great devotion to it. That is why when I went to Assisi also, I picked up this tau from the Basilica in Assisi, and I wear it all the time. So this was how Jesus carried the cross. We now move to the crucifixion itself. Here again, you see, we always think of the nails being placed here in the palm. But no, because the bones and even the ligaments are in this top to bottom vertical section. And if a nail is placed here and the body weight comes on it, it will tear out. It won't be able to take the weight. So the skillful Roman executioners, they put the nail here in what is called the dissort space between the wrist bones. So it could take the weight of the body. Similarly, see, I'm demythologizing the mysteries. I'm removing the mysteries. Let's understand the reality. Similarly, when we see the cross, we see that usually the feet are shown side by side. But again, that is incorrect depiction. Actually, the feet were placed like this, the left over the right, and one nail was pierced right through in what is called the second intermetatarsal space. This is scientific evidence from the shroud. Now we come to the fifth part, which is the crucifixion and death of our Lord, the fifth sorrowful mystery, which is where the real torture begins. Now, see, what happens is that when a person is placed on the cross, they're in like this position, trying to breathe. But after some time, you can't hold on, you sag, you sink. When the person sags or sinks, the pectoral muscles contract. And then we experience like a person having asthma, what is called emphysema, dyspnea, and finally asphyxiation. That means dying by no oxygen in your body. Now what happens when you get these cramps and your pectoral muscles cannot take it? Then with your legs you push up to try and get some air into your lungs. But then how much energy have you got in your legs? And you collapse again, and you sag and you sink and you die. And actually those who were crucified, they survived for three days like this, up and down. But Jesus was so exhausted that he died within 3 hours. I'm showing this little diagram to understand the thing. That in the first diagram you see how the person is erect, so to speak, on the cross. In the second one, he sags, it goes down like this. The third, we see he's pushing up, and the fourth, finally, you sag and you die from asphyxiation. Now, even after death, what happens? When Jesus died, but the two persons on the sides of him were still alive, because they still had that much strength in them. So what was done? We read in John 19:31 that Pilate ordered their legs to be broken. When your legs are broken, you can't push up with the legs. You'll sink, you'll sag, and you'll die. And this is exactly what happened, because the next day was the Passover and they wanted to get over with all this tamasha which they were doing. Let's remove all these things from the crosses. And then finally we read in John 19:35 that the heart was pierced with a lance. Now why was that? This was the Roman certification of death. When the relatives came to take the body down from a cross and take it for burial, before doing so, the heart was pierced with a lance to establish that the person was dead. And that was the death certificate which was given before a person was removed from the cross. So these are the realities, not mysteries, which we find from the shroud which I am sharing with you. And I purposely used all these medical terms, even I could not express them very easily, just to show how authentic it is. And let's remember, these are not sorrowful mysteries, they are torturous realities. As we approach Good Friday, I hope and pray that this narration and illustration will help us to better fathom and contemplate Jesus' sacrifice for us mere mortals. As he said to the women, Luke 23:28, "Don't weep for me." It reminds me of the song, "Don't cry for me, Argentina." Jesus saying, don't cry for me, follow me. Follow in my footsteps, take up your tau, take up your cross, and follow me. Matthew 16:24. As we enter Holy Week, may this be the message that we take from here. So please share, comment, subscribe, like, and press the bell icon so that you keep getting these videos. Thank you for listening. Till next time, God bless you.